and I decided that I would introduce you to what we call Jolly Phonics method. How many people have heard of that before? It is a very, very popular way of instructing phonics in primary school in places like Lagos and Abuja. And other places too. In Loring, where I come from, it's also very popular there. In fact, last time, the school I was last associated with had a primary section, and the primary head was looking for somebody who was a specialist in phonics. Well, you don't really need to be an expert. I'm not an expert, but I've read about it and I've used it, and I think it's quite a successful method. And what it does is it gives you a plan, which is what you are not using at the moment. And I can understand that, because where do you start? Where do you start when you're trying to teach sounds to students? Well, you needed a basic course, and this is the course that I'm trying to introduce to you today, Jolly Phonics. I thought jolly was an adjective, meaning, oh, we're happy, we're jolly, but actually jolly is the name of the gentleman who developed the course, which I found out a long time after I was knowing about the course. Now, one advantage about the course is that it is primarily meant to help you teach reading to very young students. And at an academic meeting yesterday, with the administrator, I think your school head and your primary head was mentioning that there still are some pupils who don't know how to read. Probably there are some in your class. This method takes the individual sounds systematically, one by one. I think there are 42, is it 42 sounds or 44 sounds? 42, I guess. And it takes a long time, because each lesson is supposed to be one sound. One sound, one lesson. Although, if you've read that handout, it says maybe you could go for two, depending on the ability of the pupils, maybe the older pupils. It is a very good thing to introduce to maybe upper nursery school and maybe primary 1 to 3. As I think, when you get to primary 4, primary 5, you're a bit older, and because the method is based on this letter, and I'm calling it C. He's calling it K, because they don't deal with letters, they deal with sounds. If he sees this letter, and I say it's A, and he says, ah, or sorry, ah. And if he sees this letter, and I'm calling it T, and he says, no, it's not T, it's T. So, when he sees a word like this, I'm talking about my son, and he sees a word like this, he will go, ah, and then he puts it together, and he calls it ka. In the beginning, he will pronounce the individual sounds separately, but eventually he will get to put them together. So this word is no longer cat, C-A-T, it is, and so on. And that is how they learn to read. Now you should be able to see the advantages of this. If he has seen this word before, he knows it's cat, but if he hasn't seen it before, how does he pronounce it? What's this word? Or he has seen it before in class, but he doesn't know what it, he didn't master it. What is it? What is it? But if he knows that this letter sound is K, and this letter sound is A, and this letter sound is T, and he knows this word is K'at, and that is the simple explanation of what this course is all about. Is going through the 42 sounds individually and taking them one by one and mastering the sound.